The evening had settled comfortably over Atlanta, the city lights blinking to life as the sun dipped below the horizon. At 32 years old, the Thomas twins had mastered the art of blending in, a skill that served them well in their chosen profession. Andre and Anthony looked so similar that even their mother sometimes mixed them up during video calls. Both stood 6 feet tall with athletic builds, close-cropped hair, and the same thoughtful brown eyes that missed nothing. They hadn't seen each other in nearly 8 months. Life had a way of pulling them in different directions despite their identical DNA. Andre had been working out of the Atlanta field office, while Anthony had been transferred to Chicago 2 years ago. Their jobs as FBI agents demanded long hours, unpredictable schedules, and the ability to keep secrets, even from each other. The Standard was buzzing with Friday night energy. Located in downtown Atlanta, the upscale bar attracted a diverse crowd of professionals unwinding after the work week. The brothers had chosen it for its central location and reputation for excellent cocktails. Neither had changed out of their work clothes, dark jeans, button-down shirts, and blazers that concealed their service weapons. Both had come straight from separate undercover operations, too eager to catch up to bother changing. "Man, it's good to see you," Anthony said, clapping his brother on the shoulder as they found 2 seats at the far end of the polished wooden bar. "You look tired, though," Andre laughed. "Look in the mirror lately. You're sporting some serious bags under those eyes." "Occupational hazard," Anthony replied with a shrug. He glanced around the bar, an unconscious habit from years of field work. "How's Mom doing?" "I called her last weekend, but you know how she is. Always saying everything's fine even when it isn't." "She's good. Actually dating someone new. A history professor from her college. Seems decent enough from the background check. I definitely didn't run on him." Anthony nearly choked on his water. "You didn't?" "Of course I did. You probably would have done the same if you weren't in Chicago." The bartender, a tall woman with an intricate geometric tattoo sleeve, approached them with a professional smile. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" "Old-fashioned for me," Andre said. "Make that too," Anthony added. "And maybe some food menus when you get a chance." As the bartender moved away, the brothers fell into easy conversation, catching up on family news and swapping stories that didn't involve classified information. They were careful, as always, to keep their voices down when referring to their work, using the coded language they'd developed growing up, a twin-speak that had evolved into a useful tool in their adult lives. "So how long are you in town for?" Andre asked, taking a sip of his drink when it arrived. "Just the weekend. I've got that thing in Memphis on Monday." Anthony meant a witness interview for a federal case, but he didn't need to spell it out. Then back to the Windy City. "How's the Jackson situation going?" Andre understood his brother was asking about a human trafficking case he'd mentioned in their last phone call. "Making progress. Slow but steady. The team's solid." 3 men in business suits at the other end of the bar kept glancing in their direction. The brothers noticed. They were trained to notice but didn't give it much thought. Being black men in an upscale establishment sometimes drew unwanted attention, an unfortunate reality they'd dealt with their entire lives. "You seeing anybody these days?" Anthony asked, changing the subject. Andre sighed. "Was medical examiner from Grady Hospital. Smart, funny, beautiful, but you know how it goes. Canceled dates, mysterious phone calls, the whole 'I can't tell you where I'm going or what I'm doing' thing. She deserved better than that. Tell me about it." "My longest relationship this year lasted 6 weeks. They ordered another round and some food, settling into the kind of comfortable conversation that only happens between people who've known each other their entire lives. They didn't notice when one of the businessmen at the other end of the bar pulled out his phone and made a call, his eyes darting nervously toward them. "You remember that summer at Uncle Ray's cabin?" Andre asked, smiling at the memory. "When we convinced all those kids at the lake that we could read each other's minds?" Anthony laughed. "We practiced that trick for weeks, and nobody could figure it out. We were always good at keeping secrets." Their food arrived, 2 orders of sliders and a shared plate of truffle fries. The brothers ate and talked, making plans to visit their mother together for her birthday next month. Neither of them noticed the bartender's concerned expression as she whispered something to her colleague, both of them occasionally glancing toward the door as if expecting someone. "Oh, I almost forgot," Anthony said, reaching into his pocket. "Check this out." He pulled out his phone and showed Andre a photo of a sleek black motorcycle. "Just bought it last month. 2025 Triumph Street Triple. She's a beauty, right?" Andre shook his head. Mom would have a heart attack if she knew. Remember what she used to call motorcycles? Donor cycles, they said in unison, then laughed. The businessmen who had been watching them were now huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. One of them had noticed the outline of Anthony's holstered gun when he reached for his phone. The man nudged his companions, nodding discreetly toward the brothers. You know, Andre said, lowering his voice, I've been thinking about requesting a transfer, maybe to Virginia. Quantico's always looking for instructors with field experience. Anthony raised an eyebrow. Teaching, you? The guy who couldn't sit still for a single class in college? Things change. I've been in the field for 10 years now. Starting to think about the future. The future, huh? Any particular reason? You turning into an old man on me? Andre hesitated, then admitted, I met someone. It's new, but it feels different this time. And you didn't lead with that information. Some investigator you are, burying the leady like that. Anthony grinned. Tell me everything. As Andre began describing the woman, he'd been dating for the past 2 months, a literature professor at Emory University, neither. Brother noticed the bartender's concerned expression as she took a phone call, her eyes flicking toward them repeatedly. The businessmen were now openly staring, one of them typing something on his phone while glancing up occasionally. The tallest of the group nodded toward the door, where 2 uniformed police officers had just entered the bar, scanning the room with practiced eyes. She's brilliant, Andre was saying about his new girlfriend. Challenging in all the right ways. Makes me think about things differently. And she loves old mystery novels, Christie, Doyle, all the classics. Anthony smiled, genuinely happy for his brother. She sounds great. When do I get to meet her? She's actually meeting me here later. Around 9. You'll like her. The brothers continued their conversation, unaware of the tension building around them. More people had noticed the police officers, who were now speaking to the manager near the entrance. The businessmen who had been watching the brothers appeared to be giving descriptions to another officer who had just arrived. The twins' training had taught them to be observant, to notice subtle changes in their environment. But surrounded by the comfortable familiarity of each other's company, they had momentarily let their guard down. They didn't see the 4th officer enter, or the way the group by the door kept glancing in their direction. Remember when we were kids, Anthony said, and we talked about opening that detective agency? Andre laughed. Thomas Twins Investigations. We made business cards on Dad's computer, and then we both ended up as federal agents anyway. Funny how things work out. The brothers clinked glasses, unaware that within minutes their evening would take a dramatic turn. They didn't know that someone had reported 2 suspicious men with concealed weapons, or that the responding officers hadn't been told the men might be law enforcement. They couldn't see the misunderstanding that was about to unfold, a confrontation that would test their training, patience and identity in ways they never expected. For now, though they were simply brothers catching up over drinks, their identical smiles reflecting the same easy comfort that comes from being with the one person in the world who truly understands you. At the far end of the bar, Kevin Barnett, a middle-aged investment banker with a receding hairline and an expensive watch, leaned toward his colleagues. Those 2 guys keep scanning the room. See how they keep checking the exits? And I swear I saw a gun when the one on the right reached for his phone. His friend Doug squinted through his 3rd scotch. You sure? Maybe you're being paranoid. I'm telling you something's off, Kevin insisted. They've been whispering all night. Using some kind of code. The 3rd man, Peter, rolled his eyes. So 2 black guys can't have a private conversation without it being suspicious? Kevin flushed. That's not what I meant. Look, I'm just saying, better safe than sorry, right? What's the harm in having someone check it out? While the men debated, Vanessa, the bartender with the tattoo sleeve, was having her own concerns brought to her attention. Her co-worker, Rick, nudged her as he mixed a mojito. Table 8 is freaking out about those twins at the bar, Rick whispered. The lady in the blue dress says she's certain they're armed. Vanessa glanced at the brothers who were now laughing over their food. They seemed relaxed, normal. But then again, her job had taught her that normal didn't always mean safe. Should we call Mike? She asked, referring to their manager. Rick nodded. Already texted him. He's calling it in. In the back office, Mike Sutton, manager of the Standard for 5 years, was on the phone with the police. I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, he explained. But several customers have reported seeing weapons, and in today's climate, We can't be too careful. He listened to the dispatcher's questions, answering as best he could. Two black males, identical twins by the looks of it, early 30s, well-dressed. They're sitting at the north end of the main bar. Oh, no threatening behavior, but people are getting nervous. Outside the Standard, Officer Ben Wilson and his partner, Officer Diane Chen, received the call as they finished their coffee break at the cafe across the street. Possible armed individuals at the Standard. The dispatcher's voice came through. No active threat reported, but requesting a walkthrough to assess the situation. Copy that, Wilson responded, already standing up. We're right across the street. We'll check it out. Chen tossed her coffee cup in the trash. Probably nothing. The Standard gets all types, politicians, celebrities, athletes. Could be bodyguards. Still, let's be thorough, Wilson said as they crossed the street. Call for backup? Standard procedure for potential armed suspects. Chen nodded and radioed for additional units as they approached the bar's entrance. Inside, Andre and Anthony continued their conversation, unaware of the growing tension around them. So when did you start carrying the Glock instead of the SIG? Andre asked quietly, noticing the slight difference in his brother's holster. Anthony shrugged. About 6 months ago. The department made the switch. I missed the SIG, but you know how it goes. Adapt or get left behind. They both looked up as a young couple at a nearby table suddenly gathered their things and left, the woman glancing nervously in their direction. Did we say something wrong? Anthony joked, but there was an edge to his voice. Years in law enforcement had honed his instincts, and something in the room's energy had shifted. Andre had noticed it too. Not sure, but the vibe in here just changed. He casually scanned the room, taking in the tense faces, the whispered conversations, the way certain patrons were pointedly not looking their way. Something's up. At that moment, Officers Wilson and Chen entered through the main doors, followed closely by 2 more uniformed officers who had just arrived. The room quieted noticeably. Mike, the manager, immediately approached the officers, speaking in hushed tones and gesturing subtly toward the bar. The brothers watched this interaction with professional interest, still not realizing they were the focus of concern. Well, this should be interesting, Andre murmured, taking another sip of his drink. His posture remained relaxed, but his mind was racing through protocols and procedures, a reflex from years of training. Anthony nodded almost imperceptibly. Stay calm, follow their lead. We're not on duty here. The 4 officers spread out, with Wilson and Chen approaching the bar while the others positioned themselves near the exits. The room had grown uncomfortably quiet, with patrons either watching openly or studiously looking away. Good evening, gentlemen, Officer Wilson said as he reached the twins, his hand resting casually near his holster. Enjoying your night? Yes, sir, we are, Andre replied with a polite smile. Is there something we can help you with? Officer Chen stood slightly off to the side, her eyes sharp and assessing. We received some concerns about individuals matching your description. Mind if we ask what brings you to the Standard tonight? The twins exchanged a quick glance. This wasn't their first experience with racial profiling, but it still stung every time. Just catching up, Anthony answered calmly. My brother lives here in Atlanta. I'm visiting from Chicago. Wilson nodded, his expression neutral. I notice you both keep looking around the room. Any particular reason for that? Before either could answer, one of the backup officers, a stocky man with a buzz cut named Officer Reynolds, moved closer. We've had reports that you may be armed. Is that correct? The atmosphere in the bar tensed further. Several patrons had their phones out now, recording discreetly. Look, officers, Andre began carefully. We understand the concern. But there's an explanation. Please keep your hands where we can see them. Officer Chen interrupted, her voice firm but not aggressive. Are you armed, sir? Both brothers placed their hands flat on the bar, movements slow and deliberate. Yes, we are armed, Anthony said clearly, but we're federal agents, FBI. Reynolds exchanged skeptical glances with the 4th officer, Taylor, who had moved to cover the side exit. Both of you? You're both claiming to be FBI agents? That's correct, Andre confirmed. I'm with the Atlanta field office. My brother is with Chicago. Wilson's posture hadn't relaxed. I'm going to need to see some identification. Very slowly, please. The tension in the room had ratcheted up several notches. More phones were recording now, their small lights dotting the dimmed interior like fireflies. My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket, Andre explained, his voice steady. I'm going to reach for them now very slowly. One at a time, Officer Chen instructed. You first, she said, nodding to Andre. With measured movements, Andre reached inside his blazer. Officer Reynolds immediately drew his weapon, pointing it at the floor but clearly ready. Easy, Wilson cautioned everyone. Sir, continue, but keep it slow. The other patrons were deadly silent now. The only sounds, the faint music from the speakers and the occasional clink of ice in glasses. Andre extracted his FBI credentials and held them out. Officer Chen took them, examining them carefully while Wilson kept his eyes on Anthony. Kevin, the banker who had initially reported the twins, was watching wide-eyed from his table, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the scene unfolded. These appear to be in order, Chen said after a thorough inspection. Agent Andre Thomas, FBI, Atlanta Field Office. She handed the credentials back. Now you, sir, she said to Anthony. Anthony went through the same careful process, retrieving his identification from his jacket pocket. FBI Chicago, Officer Wilson read aloud, sounding surprised despite himself. Agent Anthony Thomas, he looked between the two brothers. You're twins, both FBI agents. The fourth officer, Taylor, who had been standing by the exit, approached the group. What are the odds of that? He muttered, not quite under his breath. The mood in the room was shifting again, from tense fear to confused curiosity. The patrons were still recording, but now their expressions showed interest rather than alarm. Yes, we're both agents, Andre confirmed. We're meeting here because I live locally and my brother is in town for the weekend. We both came straight from work, which is why we're still armed. Officer Reynolds had holstered his weapon but still looked skeptical. Why didn't you identify yourselves immediately when we approached? With all due respect, Anthony replied, his tone professional but with an undercurrent of frustration. You didn't identify us as suspects or ask about weapons until just now. We were answering the questions as they came. Wilson and Chen exchanged looks. The situation had quickly transformed from a potential threat to an awkward misunderstanding. We appreciate your cooperation, Officer Chen said, taking a small step back to signal a de-escalation. We were responding to multiple concerns from patrons who reported seeing weapons. The manager, Mike, had moved closer during this exchange, looking increasingly uncomfortable. I apologize for the confusion, officers. And to you, gentlemen, he added, addressing the twins. We have a responsibility to ensure the safety of all our guests. The brothers nodded, understanding the position he was in, though the familiar sting of being profiled hadn't faded. No harm done, Andre said, his voice neutral. You were all just doing your jobs. But the evening had been irreparably altered. The easy atmosphere of their reunion had evaporated, replaced by the weight of stares and whispers from the other patrons. What should have been a simple night catching up had become yet another reminder of the complexities they navigated daily, both as black men and as federal agents sworn to uphold laws that sometimes seemed to view them with suspicion first. As the officers began to withdraw, Officer Wilson paused. Again, we apologize for the disruption. Thank you for your understanding. He seemed to want to say more, but instead just nodded and turned to leave. The Thomas brothers sat in silence for a moment after the police departed, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. Some things never change, Anthony finally said quietly. Andre signaled for the check. Come on, I know a better place across town. As they stood to leave, several pairs of eyes followed them, some apologetic, others still wary, and a few filming until the last moment. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Two men who had dedicated their lives to law enforcement, treated as suspects in a room full of people they were sworn to protect. The night air hit them like a welcome relief as Andre and Anthony stepped outside the Standard. Neither spoke until they'd walked half a block, putting distance between themselves and the uncomfortable scene they'd left behind. Unbelievable, Anthony finally said, loosening his tie with a sharp tug. 10 years with the Bureau and I still get treated like a criminal for having a drink with my brother. Andre checked his watch. Lisa's going to be at the Standard in 30 minutes. I should text her about the change of plans. He pulled out his phone, but before he could send the message, a police cruiser pulled up alongside them, rolling slowly to match their pace. The window lowered to reveal Officer Reynolds, the one who had drawn his weapon earlier. Agents Thomas, he called out. Mind if we have another word? The brothers exchanged a glance. We've already shown our credentials, Andre replied, not stopping. We're off duty and heading to another location. The cruiser continued to crawl beside them. There's been a development. We need to verify a few more details. Anthony's jaw tightened. What kind of development? Instead of answering, Reynolds spoke into his radio. Seconds later, 2 more police cars appeared, one pulling ahead to block the sidewalk in front of the brothers. 4 officers stepped out, including Wilson and Chen from earlier, along with 2 unfamiliar faces. What's going on? Andre demanded, his professional composure beginning to crack. We've already been through this. Officer Wilson stepped forward. We received a call from the FBI field office. They have no record of an agent Andre Thomas working there. Andre blinked in surprise. That's impossible. I've been there for 3 years. Call Assistant Director Holt, he'll verify. We're trying to reach him now, Chen explained. But in the meantime, we need to take precautions. There's been a series of incidents involving individuals impersonating federal agents. One of the new officers, a tall man with salt and pepper hair whose nameplate read Garrett, moved closer. We'll need you both to come with us to sort this out. This is ridiculous, Anthony said, his voice tight with controlled anger. I can verify my brother's identity. I'm an active FBI agent. With Chicago field office, Garrett countered, and we haven't been able to confirm that either. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the police presence. Several people had their phones out, recording the confrontation. The brothers were acutely aware of how the scene appeared. 2 black men surrounded by police on a busy street. Officers, Andre said, speaking clearly and calmly for the benefit of the onlookers and recording devices. We understand you're doing your job. But this is a misunderstanding that's quickly turning into harassment. We've identified ourselves as federal agents and provided credentials. Officer Reynolds stepped closer. Sir, we need you to place your hands behind your back while we sort this out. Are we under arrest? Anthony challenged. Because if not, we're free to go. We're detaining you while we investigate possible federal impersonation, Garrett stated. Turn around, hands behind your back. Andre made a split-second decision. I'm going to reach for my phone very slowly to call my supervisor. I'm not resisting. Sir, don't reach for anything, Reynolds warned, his hand moving to his holster. He said he's getting his phone. A woman from the crowd called out. Why are you reaching for your gun? The situation was deteriorating rapidly. More bystanders had gathered, their voices growing louder with concern. Traffic had slowed as drivers rubbernecked to see what was happening. Everyone stay calm, Officer Chen said, trying to take control of the situation. Sir, we'll contact your supervisor. Please just cooperate for now. Anthony locked eyes with his brother, a lifetime of unspoken communication passing between them. Both men knew that compliance was the safest option, regardless of the injustice. They'd been trained to de-escalate, not provoke. Fine, Andre said, but I want it on record that we're cooperating under protest. Slowly, both brothers turned and placed their hands behind their backs. The cool metal of handcuffs clicked around Andre's wrists first, then Anthony's. Your weapons will be temporarily confiscated and returned once your identities are confirmed, Wilson explained as officers carefully removed the firearms from the brothers' holsters. As they were being led toward separate patrol cars, a sleek black sedan with government plates screeched to a halt nearby. A tall black woman in a tailored pantsuit stepped out, her face a mask of controlled fury. What the hell is going on here? She demanded, flashing a badge. I'm Special Agent Diane Walker, FBI Atlanta. These men are federal agents. The officers froze, caught in an increasingly complicated situation. Ma'am, we're just following protocol, Garrett explained. We received information that... I don't care what information you received, Walker interrupted. Agent Andre Thomas is one of my best field operatives, and you have him in handcuffs on a public street. She turned to Anthony. And you must be the brother from Chicago. Agent Holt mentioned you were visiting. The officers looked at each other, confusion evident on their faces. We called the field office, Chen said. They had no record of Agent Thomas. Walker's expression darkened. Who exactly did you speak with? Because I was in the office until 30 minutes ago, and no such call came through our front desk. A horrible realization began to dawn on the officers. Garrett pulled out his phone and showed Walker the number they had called back after receiving the tip. That's not our office number, she said immediately. Our main line ends in 4400, not 4000. You called a spoofed number. Officer Wilson ran a hand over his face. Jesus, someone set this up. The implications hit everyone at once. Someone had deliberately called in a false report about the brothers, then followed up with a fake FBI number to escalate the situation. Uncuff them, now, Walker ordered, her voice leaving no room for argument. As Reynolds moved to remove Andre's handcuffs, a shot rang out from somewhere down the street. People screamed and dove for cover. The brothers, despite being restrained, immediately dropped to a crouch, years of training kicking in. "Everybody down," Andre shouted as another shot cracked through the night air. Walker had already drawn her weapon and was scanning rooftops and windows. "Sniper high position north side of the street." The officers scrambled to take cover behind their vehicles, pulling civilians with them. Reynolds, to his credit, positioned himself to shield Andre despite the handcuffs still binding him. "Get these off me," Andre urged. "We can help." Reynolds hesitated only a second before unlocking the cuffs. Another officer did the same for Anthony. "Our weapons," Anthony said, pointing to the patrol car where their confiscated guns had been placed. Walker was already on her radio. "This is Special Agent Walker. Shots fired at the corner of Peachtree and 3rd. Multiple law enforcement on scene. Request immediate backup and air support." Officer Garrett, who had moved to the trunk of his cruiser, tossed the brothers' service weapons to Walker, who passed them over. The civilians who hadn't fled were huddled behind cars and in doorways, their earlier indignation replaced by terror. "Any visual on the shooter?" Andre asked, checking his weapon quickly. "Negative," Chen replied, her eyes scanning the buildings across the street. "But those shots came from elevation. 2nd or 3rd floor of the parking garage, maybe." Another shot rang out, shattering the window of a parked car. The concrete where Anthony had been standing a moment before splintered with the impact. "They're targeting us specifically," he realized. "Walker, how'd you know we were here?" "Lisa called me," she explained, referring to Andre's girlfriend. "She arrived at the Standard early and saw the commotion. When she heard you'd shown credentials but were still being hassled, she called me to intervene." "Thank God she did," Andre said. "But now we've got a bigger problem. Whoever called in that fake tip wanted us isolated and exposed." Anthony was putting the pieces together. "This isn't random. Someone recognized us from a case. Both of us." A thought struck Andre. "The Donovan trafficking ring. You worked the Chicago end, I worked Atlanta. The trial is next month. And we're both key witnesses," Anthony finished. "They couldn't get to us separately, so they waited until we were together." Walker nodded grimly. "Makes sense. Take out both witnesses with one operation." The wail of approaching sirens filled the air as backup responded to Walker's call. The shooter seemed to realize their window of opportunity was closing. 2 more shots were fired in rapid succession, one hitting a street sign near Officer Reynolds, the other embedding itself in the asphalt. "They're getting desperate," Andre observed. Changing position. Anthony had been studying the parking garage during their exchange. "3rd floor, northeast corner. I saw movement." Walker was already relaying the information into her radio. "All units, possible shooter location identified. 3rd floor, northeast corner of the Peachtree parking structure." "We need to move," Andre said, eyeing the exposed position they were in. "Split up, approach from different angles. Standard containment protocol." The officers looked to Walker, who nodded her approval. "APD units will secure the perimeter. We'll take point on the approach." What had begun as a simple night out had escalated into a full-blown operation, with the brothers now working alongside the very officers who had handcuffed them minutes earlier. "Chen, you're with me," Andre said, automatically taking charge. "We'll take the south entrance. Anthony, you and Walker go in from the west. Reynolds and Garrett cover the street-level exits." Officer Wilson looked at Andre with newfound respect. "What about me?" "Stay with the civilians, keep them safe, and coordinate with incoming units." Andre checked his watch. "Everyone sync up. We move in 3 minutes." As they prepared to approach the parking structure, Anthony caught his brother's eye. "Some reunion? Huh?" Despite the danger, Andre cracked a small smile. "Never a dull moment with you in town." The night that had started with drinks and conversation had transformed into something far more dangerous. The brothers, temporarily divided by misunderstanding and prejudice, were now united again. Not just as family, but as agents with a job to do and lives to protect. The revelation of their true identities had come just in time, but the night's most lethal challenge was still unfolding. The parking garage loomed like a concrete fortress, its shadows concealing unknown threats. Andre and Officer Chen approached the south entrance in silence, moving from cover to cover with practiced efficiency. The night had taken a surreal turn, from being handcuffed by police to leading them in a tactical operation. "Just so you know," Chen said quietly as they paused behind a parked delivery truck. "I didn't agree with how that went down back there." Andre gave her a sidelong glance. "Now's not the time." "I know. Just wanted to say it." She checked her weapon, then nodded toward the garage entrance. "Ready when you are, Agent." Through his earpiece, Andre heard Walker's voice. "West team in position." "South team ready," he responded, then signaled Chen. They moved forward, entering the dimly lit first floor of the garage. Meanwhile, Anthony and Agent Walker had reached the west stairwell. The parking structure was eerily quiet, the usual sounds of the city muffled by concrete walls. 3 minutes until full perimeter is secure," Walker whispered, checking her watch. "SWAT's en route, but at least 10 out." Anthony nodded, his senses heightened. "We don't have 10 minutes. Shooter might already be moving to a secondary position." Walker studied him for a moment. "You're a lot like your brother. He doesn't like to wait either. Family trait." Anthony gestured toward the stairs. "Ladies first." "Such a gentleman," Walker replied with a hint of sarcasm, but moved forward, gun raised. On street level, Officer Reynolds positioned himself at the main vehicle exit, while Garrett covered the pedestrian entrance. Reynolds couldn't shake the feeling that he'd made a terrible mistake earlier. "All exits covered," he reported into his radio. "No movement so far." Officer Wilson had remained with the civilians, organizing them into a secure area behind police lines. Additional units had arrived, setting up a perimeter around the block. "Listen up," Wilson instructed his fellow officers. "We have 4 friendlies inside, 2 FBI agents and 2 of our own. Anyone coming out needs to be clearly identified before any action is taken." Inside the garage, Andre and Chen had cleared the first level and were making their way up the ramp to the second floor. Each parked car offered potential cover, both for them and for their target. "Movement," Chen whispered, pointing toward a white van with tinted windows. Andre signaled for her to go left while he went right, creating a crossfire position. As they approached, the van's side door suddenly slid open. "Police! Don't move!" Chen shouted, her weapon trained on the opening. A terrified couple emerged with their hands raised, civilians who had hidden inside when the shooting started. "Out this way," Andre directed them, pointing toward the exit where Reynolds was stationed. "Tell the officer Agent Thomas sent you." As the couple hurried away, Andre's radio crackled. "Third floor clear on the west side," came Anthony's voice. "Moving to the northeast section now." "Copy that. We're heading up to join you." Andre and Chen took the ramp up, moving faster now, aware that Anthony and Walker would be approaching the shooter's last known position. On the 3rd floor, Anthony and Walker advanced cautiously between rows of parked cars. The northeast corner came into view, a shadowed area where the ceiling lights had burned out or been deliberately disabled. "There," Walker whispered, pointing to a dark figure crouched behind a concrete pillar. Anthony saw it too, someone in tactical gear, assembling what looked like a rifle case. The shooter hadn't spotted them yet. "Atlanta Police Department," Walker called out. "Drop your weapon and put your hands up." The figure spun around, raising, not a rifle but a handgun, firing twice in their direction. Anthony and Walker dove behind cars as bullets ricocheted off metal and concrete. "Shots fired, 3rd floor," Walker reported into her radio. "Suspect is armed and actively engaging." Andre's voice came back immediately. "On our way up. 60 seconds out." Anthony peered around the bumper of the SUV he was using for cover. "I count 1 shooter, but there could be more." The suspect fired again, shattering the window of the car next to Anthony, sending glass showering over him. "FBI," Anthony shouted. "You're surrounded. There's no way out." A man's voice called back from behind the pillar. "Should have minded your own business, Thomas. Both of you." Anthony recognized the voice immediately. "Derek Hunt," he said to Walker, "Donovan's head of security. Chicago PD picked him up last year, but he made bail. How nice of him to confirm our theory, Walker replied grimly. At least we know who we're dealing with now. Below, Andre and Chen had reached the third-floor ramp. They could hear the exchange of gunfire above. We'll come up behind him, Andre decided. You circle around to the right, I'll take left. Chen nodded. Be careful, he sounds desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. Andre checked his ammunition, then began moving up the ramp. But they're also unpredictable. Hunt fired another round toward Anthony and Walker. You think I came alone? He shouted. Donovan's people are everywhere. As if to confirm his words, the sound of gunfire erupted from another corner of the garage. Chen ducked as bullets struck the wall near her head. Second shooter, she called out. East stairwell. The situation had suddenly become more complicated. Andre made a split-second decision. Chen, stay on Hunt. I'll deal with the second shooter. Before she could protest, he was already moving toward the east stairwell, staying low and using vehicles for cover. Through his earpiece, he heard Anthony updating the outside team. Be advised, multiple shooters confirmed. At least 2, possibly more. Outside, Lisa had arrived at the police perimeter, frantically searching for Andre. Officer Wilson spotted her distress. Ma'am, you need to stay behind the line. My boyfriend is in there, she said, her voice tight with worry. Andre Thomas. He's FBI. Wilson's expression changed. You're Lisa? Agent Walker mentioned you. Is he okay? What's happening in there? Before Wilson could answer, the sound of increased gunfire echoed from the garage. Lisa's face paled. Inside, Andre had located the second shooter, a woman in black tactical gear firing from the stairwell doorway. He recognized her too. Vanessa Reed, Hunt's girlfriend and a known associate of the Donovan ring. The bartender, from earlier, the one with the tattoo sleeve, had been part of the setup all along. FBI, Andre shouted. Drop your weapon, Reed. She answered with gunfire, forcing him to pull back behind a pickup truck. On the other side of the garage, Anthony and Walker were still pinned down by Hunt. They needed to change the dynamic, and fast. Cover me, Anthony said to Walker. I'm going to flank him. Walker nodded. On 3. She counted down, then laid down suppressive fire while Anthony darted between cars, circling toward Hunt's position. Chen had worked her way closer as well, creating a triangular approach that would leave Hunt with nowhere to go. Outside, more police units had arrived, including SWAT. Reynolds and Garrett were briefing the tactical team leader. 2 FBI agents and 2 officers inside, Reynolds explained. At least 2 armed suspects, possibly more. The SWAT commander nodded. We'll set up snipers on the adjacent buildings and prepare for entry. Can you get a message to your people inside? Already on it. Garrett raised Walker on the radio. SWAT is setting up. What's your position? Walker's response was punctuated by gunfire. Northeast corner, 3rd floor. Hunt is pinned down, but we have a second shooter in the east stairwell engaging Agent Andre Thomas. Inside, Andre was in a deadlock with Reed. Neither could advance without exposing themselves. Give it up, Vanessa, he called out. The building is surrounded, SWAT's coming in. This only ends one way. It was supposed to be so simple, she shouted back. Get you both in one place. The tip to police, the fake call from FBI. By the time anyone figured it out, you'd both be dead. No witnesses, no case against Donovan. How'd you know Anthony was in town? Her laugh was bitter. You think we don't monitor the people trying to take us down? We've been watching both of you for months. While she was talking, Andre caught movement in his peripheral vision. Chen had circled around through another stairwell and was now behind Reed, signaling to Andre. On the other side of the garage, Anthony had managed to get within 20 feet of Hunt. The man was cornered, but still dangerous. It's over, Derek, Anthony called out. Donovan's not worth dying for. Hunt's response was another wild shot. You don't understand. There's no walking away from this. If I don't take you out, they'll kill me anyway. Walker had used the distraction to move closer, then help us bring Donovan down. Testify against him. You can't protect me from him. Nobody can. We can try, Anthony offered. Better odds than you've got right now. For a moment, the garage fell silent as Hunt considered his options. Then suddenly Reed's voice came from the stairwell. "Don't listen to them, Derek. Finish the job." Hunt seemed to make a decision. He rose from behind the pillar, gun raised. But instead of firing at Anthony or Walker, he turned and fired toward Reed's position. The unexpected move created chaos. Reed returned fire at Hunt, momentarily forgetting about Andre and Chen. It was the opening they needed. "Police. Drop the weapon," Chen shouted, emerging from her position behind Reed. Caught between threats, Reed spun around, still firing. Andre saw Chen go down. "Officer down," he yelled into his radio, rushing forward despite the danger. Hunt used the confusion to make a break for the ramp, but Anthony was faster. He tackled Hunt to the concrete, the impact sending the gun skidding under a nearby car. Walker was on them in seconds, helping to secure Hunt while Anthony zip-tied his hands. "Stay with her," Andre told Chen, who was clutching her arm where a bullet had grazed her. "I've got Reed." Reed was trying to reach the stairwell, limping from what appeared to be a wound in her leg from Hunt's shot. Andre cut her off, his weapon trained on her center mass. "It's over, Vanessa. Put the gun down." For a tense moment, it seemed she might choose to go out fighting. Then, with a look of defeat, she dropped her weapon and raised her hands. "This doesn't end with us," she warned. "Donovan has people everywhere." "Maybe," Andre acknowledged, moving forward to secure her. "But he just lost two of his best." Within minutes, SWAT had entered the garage, securing both suspects and evacuating Chen. Outside, the news had spread among the officers. The brothers they had handcuffed earlier had just led a successful operation to capture two dangerous criminals. As Andre and Anthony emerged from the garage with Walker, the police perimeter parted for them. Officer Wilson approached first, his hand extended. "Agent Thomas," he said, addressing both brothers simultaneously. "I don't know what to say except—" "I'm sorry." Anthony accepted the handshake. "You were doing your job. Just maybe consider that not every black man with a gun is a criminal." "Lesson learned," Wilson assured him. "The hard way, unfortunately." Lisa broke through the line and rushed to Andre, embracing him tightly. "You promised me a quiet night out," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. "Technically, I delivered," he replied with a tired smile. For about 20 minutes. Nearby, Reynolds was speaking with Garrett. "Can't believe we cuffed 2 federal agents. The paperwork on this is going to be a nightmare." "Better paperwork than what could have happened," Garrett replied soberly. "If Agent Walker hadn't shown up when she did." He didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone present understood how differently the night could have ended. Not with arrests and minor injuries, but with funerals. As paramedics checked Chen's arm, she looked up at Andre. "For what it's worth, I'd work with you again, maybe under better circumstances next time." "Next time," Andre agreed with a nod of respect. The night that had begun with a simple reunion had revealed truths about identity, perception, and justice that none of them would soon forget. The Thomas brothers had gone from suspects to saviors in the span of an hour, forcing everyone involved to confront uncomfortable realities about the world they all shared and the assumptions that too often divided it. Morning light filtered through the blinds of Atlanta's BI field office as Andre stared at his computer screen, trying to focus on his report. Across from him, Anthony nursed a cup of coffee, looking as tired as Andre felt. Neither had slept much after the events at the parking garage. "How's Officer Chen?" Anthony asked, breaking the silence. "Just got a text from Walker. Clean through and through on the arm. She'll be back on duty in a couple weeks." Andre rubbed his eyes. "How's your statement coming?" Anthony sighed. "Strangest one I've ever had to write. Please explain how you were mistaken for a criminal while being a federal agent. At least we caught Hunt and Reed. That's what matters." Andre leaned back in his chair. "Walker says Reed is already talking. Wants a deal. Smart move. Donovan doesn't tolerate failure." Anthony checked his phone. "Speaking of which, Chicago office just texted. They've increased security at the courthouse for next month's trial." The door opened and Assistant Director Raymond Holt entered. A tall man with a commanding presence, Holt had been their supervisor when they both trained at Quantico. "Thomas and Thomas," he said, nodding to each brother. "Quite a night you two had." Andre stood. "Sir, we were just finishing our reports." Sit. Holt waved him down and took a seat himself. "I've been fielding calls all morning. The Atlanta PD chief, the mayor's office, 3 news outlets, and the Justice Department. Everyone wants to know exactly what happened last night. "And what are you telling them?" Anthony asked. Holt's expression remained neutral. "The truth. 2 federal agents were racially profiled, then targeted by criminals attempting to prevent them from testifying in a major trafficking case." He placed a tablet on the desk, showing a news website. The headline read, "FBI agents profiled, then save officers who handcuffed them." "It's everywhere," Holt continued. "Security footage from the Standard, cell phone videos from bystanders. The whole incident from start to finish." The brothers exchanged glances. This wasn't just about them anymore. "What's the fallout?" Andre asked. "Mixed. The police department's taking heat, of course. But the focus is shifting to how you both handled it, preventing what could have been a bloodbath, saving Officer Chen's life." Anthony scrolled through the article. "Are they mentioning the Donovan connection?" "Minimal details. We don't want to compromise the case." Holt leaned forward. "But there's something else. The Attorney General called this morning. He wants to use what happened as a catalyst for a new joint training initiative between local PD and federal agencies. Focus on de-escalation and recognition of racial bias." Andre wasn't sure how to feel about that. "So our near-death experience gets to be a teaching moment?" "If you want it to be," Holt replied evenly. "He's asking if you'd both consider being part of it." "Completely your choice." Before either could respond, Holt's phone buzzed. He checked it, then stood. "Think about it. Oh, and there's a delegation from Atlanta PD waiting in the conference room, including Officers Wilson and Reynolds. They've asked to speak with you both." After Holt left, the brothers sat in silence for a moment. "What do you think?" Anthony finally asked. "About the training program?" Andre stared at the news article, at a freeze frame of them being handcuffed. "I don't know. Part of me thinks it's not our job to teach people not to see us as threats. And the other part? The other part knows nothing changes if we don't try to change it." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Officer Chen entered, her arm in a sling, followed by Wilson, Reynolds, and their captain. "Agents Thomas," the captain began. "I'm Captain Rivera. I wanted to personally extend our department's apologies for last night's events." Andre nodded acknowledgement but said nothing. "More importantly," Rivera continued, "I wanted to thank you both, not just for apprehending the suspects, but for how you handled the initial confrontation. The restraint you showed." He paused. "Many would not have been so professional." Chen stepped forward. "I owe you my life, Agent Thomas." She looked directly at Andre. "I won't forget that." Reynolds cleared his throat. "We came to say we're sorry, and that we learned something last night, something important. We did our jobs poorly," Wilson added bluntly. "We let assumptions and bias cloud our judgment, and it nearly got people killed." The sincerity in their voices was evident, but Andre and Anthony had heard apologies before. What mattered was what happened next. "So what changes?" Anthony asked. "Beyond saying sorry to us?" Rivera answered. "We're implementing immediate procedural changes. Officers will be required to verify credentials through official channels before detaining anyone claiming to be law enforcement. And we're expanding our anti-bias training program. With your help, we hope," Chen added. "If you're willing." The request hung in the air. Andre exchanged a look with his brother, a silent conversation passing between them. Later that afternoon, the brothers finally got the quiet dinner they'd originally planned. Lisa joined them at a small restaurant away from downtown, listening as they recounted the full story. "I still can't believe you were back on duty an hour after being handcuffed," she said, shaking her head. "If it were me, I'd have been furious." "Oh, we were," Anthony assured her. "Still are in some ways." Andre set down his fork. "But fury doesn't fix anything. Mom always taught us that." "Speaking of Mom," Anthony said, "have you told her what happened?" "Not yet. She'll either panic or drive down here to read the riot act to half of Atlanta." Lisa smiled. "I'd pay to see that." Their laughter was interrupted by a server, approaching with a bottle of wine. "Compliments of the couple at the corner table," he explained. They looked over to see an elderly black couple, raising their glasses in a silent toast. "Words getting around," Lisa observed. "It's been a crazy 24 hours, Andre admitted. "But something good might come from it." Anthony checked his watch. "My flight back to Chicago leaves in 4 hours. Think we can finish dinner without any more shootouts or misunderstandings?" "No promises," Andre grinned. But I did accept Captain Rivera's invitation to speak at next month's department training, and Holt's proposal for the Joint Task Force. Anthony raised an eyebrow. Going all in, huh? Someone has to. Might as well be us. Andre glanced at Lisa, who squeezed his hand supportively. Besides, we have a unique perspective. How many people can say they've been on both sides of that situation, suspected because of how they look, but also part of the system that does the suspecting? True, Anthony acknowledged. I accepted too, by the way. Chicago PD could use the same training. 3 days later, Andre stood at the airport gate saying goodbye to his brother. Next time, let's just go fishing or something, Anthony suggested. Somewhere quiet, away from bars, police, and people trying to kill us, Andre laughed. Boring, but I could probably use boring for a change. You sure about this training program? It's going to take time, and there will be resistance, I'm sure, Andre replied. What happened to us? It's not unique. The only unique part is that we had badges to protect us eventually. Most people don't. Anthony nodded in understanding. Mom would be proud. Yeah, until she sees us on the news and realizes we didn't tell her about the shooting. They shared a laugh, then embraced tightly. Take care of yourself, brother, Andre said. See you at the trial next month? Wouldn't miss it. Hopefully with less drama this time. As Anthony disappeared through the boarding door, Andre felt his phone buzz. A text from Officer Chen. Training program starts Monday. Half the department has signed up. Thank you. He smiled slightly as he typed his response. See you Monday. Walking out of the terminal into the bright Georgia sunshine, Andre reflected on the strange turns life could take. What had begun as a simple evening with his brother had become a flashpoint, a moment that highlighted both the persistent problems in society and the possibility of progress. The road ahead would be long and difficult with no guarantee of success. But for the first time in years, it felt like a road worth traveling. Not just for himself, but for everyone who'd ever been judged first and seen second. Sometimes the worst nights could lead to better days if you were willing to do the work to get there.